júcara, mácara, títere fue, yo no fui, fue tete, hecho leche, tete, a, de, se. Okay, she's first.
2 minutes.
Hi, I'm really happy to be here to meet you all. My name is Elena Fontes, and I'm running for Alameda County Superior Court Judge. I have a private practice practicing criminal defense. I've been practicing in Alameda County for 26 years, and I've been in the courts almost daily in Alameda County. The seat is open because Judge Carol Brosnahan is retiring after 40 years on the bench. And for those of you who don't know Carol Brosnahan, she is legendary in the Alameda County Superior Courts. She has endorsed me to step into her seat. She was a classmate of Ruth Bader Ginsburg back in Harvard. So she doesn't suffer fools. And out of the 3 candidates, she has endorsed me for this seat. I've also been endorsed by 26 other judges in the Alameda County Superior Court who know me, who know my work, who know my commitment to equal access to justice for everyone. It's a rare opportunity that you have to pick your judges. Oftentimes judges are appointed by the governor. And here is an opportunity to take your progressive values and put them into action. I am the first Latina to run, Latina or Latino in Alameda County. There have only been 2 Latinas on the bench since 1997, and so there is no more time to wait to be invited to the table, so I stepped into the race. So I hope I have your vote. I'm happy to take any questions that you have. And this is an opportunity for you to add diversity to the bench, and I hope you see the importance of that as I do. Thank you.
John, please.
1.
Go.
I'll wait for the timer to start up again.
Yeah, let me just get it down to a minute here, and I'll stop it here, and I'll get it up to 2 minutes. Okay, all right, go.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Mark Fickes, and I'm also running for Superior Court here in Alameda County. I'm proud to be the only candidate that's been endorsed by the Democratic Party. I'm proud to be the only candidate that's been endorsed by the Asian Pacific American Democratic Caucus. I'm endorsed by more than 20 elected leaders throughout Alameda County, and I'm also co-endorsed by the Alameda County Green Party. I've been practicing law for about 24 years now, and what I believe I bring to the race is diversity of experience in addition to diversity in terms of the other cultural things that we talk about. If elected, I'd be only the 2nd openly gay man to serve on Alameda County Superior Court out of 72 judges. But beyond that, what I bring is diversity of experience. I started my career as a prosecutor where I prosecuted domestic violence and sexual assault cases. I then went into private practice where I developed a lot of experience in representing companies in intellectual property litigation. I spent 8 years working for the Securities and Exchange Commission where I prosecuted corporate fraud, corruption, greed, and various investment scams. And then for the past 9 years, I've been a partner in a 9-attorney practice. We're 4 partners, 5 associates, and then we have 5 support staff where we do a diverse litigation practice composed of civil rights litigation, workers' rights litigation, whistleblower retaliation claims, and that kind of stuff. I also bring a lot of courtroom experience. I've been in the courts every day. I've tried 50 trials to verdict in state and federal court, both in other states, California, throughout the counties here in California. Of those 50 trials, a little more than half have been criminal, and just a little less than half have been civil. So I'd ask for your vote because I do agree that we need more diversity on the bench, and by that I don't mean just diversity in terms of sexual orientation, but diversity in terms of experience. We have a lot of criminal law practitioners on the bench, and I think we need to have some people who do a little something else from time to time. I hope to earn your vote and your endorsement. Thank you.
Oh, we'll go off now.
I don't see anyone with a question. There must be 1 or 2 questions. We'll take 3 questions, so go for it. No one asked a question?
Yeah, I have one.
All right. And please, no preface, just go for the judgment. Question.
Okay. I was just wondering, you both sound great. What are the issues? Are there any issues that you think that you would address in a particular way that might distinguish you? You know, I don't know exactly what kind of cases you have to deal with. But
Thanks for the question. So there are a number of issues that come up. The first one, and to just speak for a minute about the diversity of practice area. 81% of the judges in the Alameda County courts come from the from civil and prosecution side. So that perspective is pretty well filled in Alameda County. What there isn't much of a perspective of is in the private criminal defense practice, which is what I bring. That and cultural diversity. So diversity of practice isn't I think what most of us think of as diversity. So with the private criminal defense experience, what that brings is I work with my clients and their families. And so usually in a private practice, it's not only your client, but the families who hire you to represent them. And in that, I get to see, for that demographic, the barriers they have to justice. And that comes in many forms, in language, in access to the courts, in how they have to travel, how far they have to travel to the courts, and the costs of litigation. So I have that perspective that I also bring to it. And also for reform of the mass incarceration of our young black and brown people. What we have is, there are alternatives for nonviolent offenders for treatment, for job training, for counseling, all of those things that would take someone out of the criminal justice system and into effective and positive areas that will turn them around. For most young people, you know, when we were younger, not everything that is criminal now is criminal. We had, when we were younger, an opportunity to just screw up horribly, but we didn't end up in the criminal justice system. And so many young people are in the criminal justice system now, and there are opportunities to move them out of there. And so I'm a big proponent of all of the collaborative courts which take people out of that system and into some meaningful treatment and counseling. Thank you.
It's supposed to be 1 minute.
Oh, sorry.
1 minute. That's okay. John, please, 1 minute. Mike.
It's all right. So just briefly, you know, these statistics are interesting things. This 81% statistic, really, when you say that there are prosecutors in civil, what you really mean is of that 81%, 99% of that 81 are former prosecutors and defense attorneys, and 1% or so are former civil practitioners. But beyond that, I'd urge you to go back actually and look at the endorsement meeting from the California Democratic Party where I was endorsed. I've been talking since the beginning of this campaign about the barriers of access to the court system for people who don't have a lot of means, who particularly find themselves caught up in the civil justice system. See, if you have no resources and you're accused of the crime, the Constitution guarantees you a right to counsel at the taxpayer expense, transcripts, and access to the courts at taxpayer expense. If you're one of those 4 women that was in the Victorian house in Oakland who's being evicted, you have no such constitutional guarantees. And the barriers, and I know because I represent small businesses, people who have between 2 and 10 employees. If you're one of those people and you find yourself in a lawsuit, you often have to choose between settling that suit and going bankrupt because it's so expensive. So one of the things I intend to work for if I'm elected judge is to really work on the barriers to access to the courts. Namely, we have a big fancy courthouse in Dublin that hears all cases from Santa Rita Jail because it's right down there. But if you're getting evicted and you live in Dublin, that's not the courthouse you go to. You go to the courthouse down in Hayward. If you're a single mother and you're in the middle of a divorce case and you're fighting about custody and you live in Livermore, guess where you have to go? You have to go to Hayward. So what I want to talk about is redistributing our caseload so that people who don't have access to transportation, don't have access to money, have easier access to the court system to have their cases heard.
Another question? Yes, please.
I have a question, a comment on prison reform and sentencing guidelines.
Just a question.
That's
What
it.
is the question?
That's the question. I would like to hear them comment on prison reform and sentencing guidelines.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. I mean, that is a problem. The over-incarceration of black and brown people in Alameda County is a problem, and particularly for nonviolent offenders. So there are many ways to, from the beginning of a court case, which includes with bail and allowing people who are not a flight risk and not a danger to the community to be back out in the community while they're fighting their case, and that prevents people from feeling pressured to resolve the case and pleading to a case because they got to get back out, they got to get back to take care of their family. And for prison reform, it's the same sort of thing. I think to allow judges the discretion to do what they think is the appropriate thing given the situation, and not be bound by certain sentencing guidelines.
One of the hard things about being a judge is there's not a lot you can do beyond a case or controversy before you. So a judge can't just reform the prison system outside of the context, for example, of a case that might be before that judge. We see a lot of civil rights cases over, for example, transgender issues in our local jails, and a judge can decide a controversy that's before him or her or them. But I would agree that, and we also see it particularly in the Asian Pacific Islander population. There's really an explosion of more gang activity, and we see a lot of young kids who are making mistakes because they don't have a lot of support in home, and they don't have a lot of support in their environment. And so they get kind of caught up in gangs and other things, and then they find themselves in the criminal justice system. One of the things I would advocate a lot for is to expand our access to restorative justice systems. We see it, my kids go to Oakland Tech, for example, high school, and we're seeing a lot more in terms of dealing with various issues at school, that a restorative justice approach where it's the community that kind of works together with the kid who's kind of gotten off the path as a way to resolve that is actually much more effective than when we kind of bring young people in particular into the criminal justice
Very good,
system.
thank you. We have one third last question from, 3 questions, please.
So my question to you is, how do you feel about the abundance of criminal behavior by the Alameda County Sheriff's Office, as an example, where people...
Just a question, no preface, no history.
No,
How do you feel about the sheriff?
In other words, where the law enforcement is actually the criminal agency. I just want to know what you both feel about it.
Well, I'm not aware of a specific criminal case. I know that there's a lot of concerns about, for example, the way the Sheriff's Department handled the eviction of these 4 people kind of showing up for an eviction with basically a roving army. But beyond that, I think what we commit to as judges is to fairly try each case that comes before us. And we do see problems with this all the time. In Butte County, for example, where I have a lot of cases, we have cases of officers shooting people, of officers getting into all kinds of violent cases, and yet we have a district attorney that's never once charged a police officer in an officer-related shooting. Judges can't control that, but to the extent that people from law enforcement find themselves in the court system, I can give you my pledge that they're going to be treated with the same fairness and the same potential penalties as anyone else. In other words, I don't think you get a special break just because you have a history in law enforcement if you find yourself in the criminal justice system.
I agree with Mark, that when there is an officer and a layperson in the courtroom, they should all be treated equally. And to the extent that it's in the criminal justice system or in civil litigation, if somebody is suing an officer or the city based on an officer's conduct, that everybody be treated with the same respect and the same access to justice. And beyond that, I think then that the torch goes to Alameda County Board of Supervisors to look into the sheriff's office, to audit the sheriff's office and do those things to make them accountable, just like everybody else.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have
Thank
1
you.
minute. You have 1 minute to close. And we'll start with her, so we'll finish with her. Is that okay?
That sounds
All right.
reasonable to me.
Okay, good. Elena, please.
Thank you. So thank you for your questions. They're thoughtful, and I appreciate the opportunity to get to know you all, hear what's important to you. This is a hugely important position, and this is your opportunity to have some voice in who represents you in the courts. I am the first Latina to run, and I am also a lesbian and a mother and a small business owner. And my private practice perspective is unique, as well as my other perspectives. And so what I bring to the bench, or what I would bring to the bench, is a sense of justice, equal access to justice. And even with my firm commitment to justice for everyone, I still have 26 judges on the court who know me, who know my work, who know my integrity and my commitment to justice, and they think I would be the right person for the job. Thank you.
I thank you again for the opportunity to talk to you all. I'd ask you to join with the California Democratic Party the Asian Pacific American Democratic Caucus, and more than 20 elected leaders throughout Alameda County who've endorsed me because they know me, and they know not only my legal work, but my commitment to this community, the efforts I've put to help feed the hungry, to clothe those who are unhoused, to fight against HIV/AIDS, and to really be a part of this community. And that's why I have those endorsements, as well as endorsements from judges and lawyers and the like. But I think with me, what you get is a diversity of perspective in terms of not just being another criminal lawyer who sits on the bench hoping to handle more criminal cases. I too have represented small businesses. I do run a small business. I know what the impact of lawsuits are on small businesses. And if I am elected, I can assure you that I'm going to show everyone the kind of dignity, respect, and courtesy that everybody would want to receive in a court of law. And so thank you for your time and your support. Have a good afternoon, everybody.